Welcome and thank you for joining today's Insights webinar. My name is Matthew Stevens. I'm the Managing Director at eHotelier and I'll be your facilitator for today's Insights webinar, Confronting the COVID-19 Challenge. Today our partner Cendyn will be presenting the latest trends, followed by a panel discussion with two expert industry leaders where we will confront the challenges facing hotel groups through COVID-19. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat box and we'll endeavour to answer as many as possible at the end of the discussion. Hospitality and tourism is a very entrepreneurial, creative and flexible sector of international economies. It has a strong, unique culture and hospitable values that helps to create resilience and positivity. It's a valued sector of society with strong trust in its communities and values. The keys to long-term recovery will be in using the culture and values of hospitality combined with innovation, entrepreneurial flair and flexibility in resetting, redesigning, reimagining and re-engineering hospitality for the post-COVID-19 world. Today we'll be confronting these challenges and discussing how to react to maximize opportunities through this period of inevitable change. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by three hospitality leaders with extensive experience managing and advising hotel organizations globally. As Vice President of Marketing, Carolyn Hosna is responsible for digital strategy and brand development at White Hospitality. White Hospitality includes 90+ flagged hotels across North America, comprised of the major global Marriott, Hilton and Hyatt brands, ranging from select service to 3 of the top Marriott Convention and Resort Network hotels in the US. White Hospitality also includes 40+ independent restaurants and also the Bush Creek Ranch, voted #1 luxury resort in the US by both Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast. Carolyn has been with White Lodging for over 10 years and sits on the digital advisory boards for Marriott, Hyatt and Hilton, as well as HSMAI's Marketing Advisory Council. Carolyn has been recognised as one of HSMAI's top 25 extraordinary minds in marketing. Our second panellist is Isaac Gerstenzang, a leader in marketing and digital sectors with more than 23 years of proven success in the hospitality space. Isaac is also a recipient of the HSMAI Top 25 Extraordinary Minds in Hospitality, Sales, Marketing and Revenue Optimization. Isaac earned an MBA from Syracuse University and was a member of the HSMAI Marketing Advisory Board for over 8 years. In his current role with Minor Hotels, Isaac is responsible for devising and developing the strategic annual marketing plan and oversees all marketing campaign planning and execution across all channels in close collaboration with the e-commerce, CRM and marketing teams. Additionally, Isaac is responsible for the website and CRM component strategies, including the implementation of personalization and dynamic content to drive awareness and revenue to Anantara Hotels and Resorts and Avani Hotel. Minor Hotels is an international hotel owner, operator and investor, currently with a portfolio of over 540 properties under the brands of Anantara, Avani, Alawana, Oaks, NH Hotels and Tivoli Properties. Minor Hotels operates in 56 countries across Asia Pacific, the Middle East, Africa, the Indian Ocean, Europe and South America. Our presenter and final panellist is Michael Bennett. Michael oversees global marketing, sales development, product and data science at Cendyn, leading the Cendyn San Diego office. Michael has over 24 years of international management experience working with companies such as KSL Resorts and Capital, White Lodging, Knight Ridder, the Nature Conservancy, and Eastman Kodak. Michael's specialties lie in marketing, e-commerce, digital and mobile implementations, all with a proven track record of success. Michael focuses on managing with an emphasis on profitable growth through an increase in CLV, while constantly reiterating creative marketing is only successful when held accountable to the results it produces. Michael currently sits on the National HSMAI Marketing Board, where he has been proactively involved for the past 8 years. Thank you again for joining today's Insights webinar. I'd now like to hand over to Michael to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Matthew. So today I'm going to share, just briefly to start the conversation, some insights from our forthcoming email benchmarking report. So this Thursday, we'll release a report for the first time where we've looked at email benchmarking data from the previous year and then year to date. We analyzed over 2 billion emails have been processed through our system, and we're excited to share some of the results. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a couple of KPIs in each area, and showing 2019 at this point, given what we're going through, might seem like it was pretty far in the past, but I think it's important that we reflect back as we start planning for a recovery and try to understand kind of where our high points were. And 2019 was definitely a high point from an email marketing standpoint. So I'm going to talk kind of just a little bit in each one, but again, I think it's important for everyone to understand based on the region and where you fall within the chain scale, perhaps kind of what the median goals are. So for in this example, 24, 33, 30% from an open rate perspective regionally. But what's the upper quartile? Where's the real stretch goal for you as you're planning to get back in business? So again, we'll have a much deeper data set when the report's released on Thursday, but I want to just kind of give a couple snapshots. Next slide, please. So this looks at open rates as well. This is by type of hotel within the chain scale. In this case, we're showing four. The full report will go through the entire chain scale, but looking at luxury, upper mid, upper upscale, and upscale. Again, just trying to understand where you fit within your hotel or your brand of hotels, and marry that with from a regional perspective. Next slide. So this is year-to-date data. I think this starts to tell a very interesting story. You can see there's a notable uptake in March and April in all regions. And we know that consumers are spending more time online. They're engaging more with the brands. But I think most importantly, for those that invest in email, this shows that its continued strength and power in terms of its importance in the overall marketing funnel. Next slide. Similarly, when you look at the chain scales, the four in this example, you see that similar, not quite a hockey stick in terms of open rate going up, but it's significant, right? We see that, and again, it's across all of them. So we're excited to see. The question is that as the hotels open and consumers start buying and people start going back to work and have less time on their hands, can we hold true to that? Because you can see previously, I mean, it ebbs and flows a little bit, but generally it's within a couple of points. It's pretty flat over the same time period. Next slide, please. So this is open rates from a regional standpoint. Again, it's pretty consistent across the board. I would say, the stretch goals are definitely, in EMEA and APAC are just a little bit higher than the domestic US. We see that generally in most of the KPIs. So again, I would focus on, what's that median line as sort of, this is where I need to get back to, and then use the upper quartile as a stretch. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit different way of thinking about it. Typically, you measure click open rates and clicks separately. We're starting a new KPI within the Cendyn ecosystem, which is C4. Really, when you think about that, it combines open rate with click-through rate, and it helps sort of isolate the effectiveness of content. So not only open are they engaging and clicking. This is important. As your call to actions will change from, hey, this is kind of what we're doing a brand, here's our updates, to we need you to book rooms. So we're kind of combining two into one. And interesting enough here, again, the median is relatively flat, 16, 14, 16. But as you look at your stretch, in this case, the Americas is higher than EMEA, but APAC again leads the the overall in terms of stretch from a performance standpoint. Next slide. And then chain scale, you really start to see, you got luxury and upper upscale and upscale with kind of upper mid-scale in the middle there. But the more you move up the star rating, 4 and 5 in particular, the stretch goes up. The median is pretty flat within a couple of points, but important to, the content's really key in this piece. So you need to make sure that you're measuring what people are actually clicking on and engaging with as you start thinking about changing from a content only strategy to, revenue driving call to action activities. Next slide, please. So here's by region. We saw a downward trend in March, just a slight dip there, and then there's uptick in February. We're starting to see it come back a little bit. EMEA is leading that there. APAC has kind of dipped and held, and the US has been primarily flat. Next slide. So in terms of by chain scale, you can see that the upscale there and luxury is basically flat. It's kind of hidden behind the light blue, the very tealish line there. But the upscale, they're starting to see a pretty good increase there. Everything else is pretty flat, down to flat. But we're seeing more content that's in not just updates. There's actually call to actions coming into play. So it'll be interesting as hotels start to open, and as we see most of our forward-looking data shows that that's June 1st and beyond. Obviously, that's right around the corner. There are some hotels, obviously, that are open in the Asia markets. We see hotels, in particular in the gaming space, casino space here in the States, starting to open in the next 7 days. And then others to follow in June. Pretty low occupancy rates for the next 60 days, we can see in our forecast models. But nonetheless, the hotels are opening as they kind of figure out what the new normal looks like. So those call to actions will be extremely important to drive not only the open, but also the click-through to drive revenue back into the hotels. Next slide, please. So you can see if we look at this regionally, pretty flat from a median standpoint, just 15%, just below an APAC, and then the stretch goals being almost 30% there from a regional standpoint. So again, when the benchmark study comes out, we're going to go a lot deeper into this across all the chain scales, and then from a customer perspective, for those that are customers of ours, we'll then can do comparisons at either a brand or a hotel level against the region, so you can understand performance metrics and really build those plans as it comes back into as you're rethinking your reopening strategies. Next slide. So nights per booking or average length of stay, depending on where you're from in the world and how or what you call it. You can see that the median is pretty flat, just south of two and a half. When you look at that on a 2019 full year basis, the stretch being close to 3 in the Americas, and then just north of 2.5 in the rest of the world. Next slide. And then by class, over 3 in the luxury, but again, pretty even, mid 2s, 2.5, just over. So, using those as a baseline from a median standpoint, wanting to understand that's where you want to get back to in terms of length of stay. And there's some interesting trends here you'll see on the next slide when we look at year to date. Next slide, please. So we see significant trend, the actual hockey stick there on the upscale class. So in your 3-star, 3.5s around the globe. We assume, for the most case, and what our data would show us, is that that's related to first responder, long extended stays. type of hotels. We see brands like Extended Stay America, Residence Inn, those type of brands. In addition to the luxury brands, we see that from brands around the globe who have offered up rooms to doctors and first responders. We see a little bit of deal taking, not a lot of rate dropping per se or leisure travel yet, but we anticipate that's forthcoming. Next slide, please. So here you can see it across the globe. You can see that that uptick is, kind of ebbs and flows. In particular in APAC, it's kind of been up and down. But the last month here, you can see that it's really trending pretty similar across the globe. So the Americas has been more flat, generally speaking, but it's nice to see an uptick in all three regions across the globe. Next slide. So here's daily rate, ADR in US dollars by region. So this is full year 19. Skews, again, a little bit high in this data set because we're looking at basically 3.5, 4, and 5-star hotels. But again, the median rates in the 200s other than APAC, just shy of that. But the stretch goals are pretty significant. The luxury comp sets in here are driving that up. Next slide, please. You can see that here. So the luxury class driving, to stretch at over $500 a night ADR full year 2019. And then the rest of the chain scale is pretty similar in terms of ADRs. Next slide. So, generally, when you look at year to date, the good news is that it hasn't fallen off the map. The hoteliers are holding rate and in lieu of driving occupancy so far. There's a little bit of a dip there in APAC. I don't think it's anything to get too worried about yet. Obviously, they were dealing with this significantly earlier than we were here in the States. In Europe, for that matter. The U.S. has been very flat, with a slight uptick here in April. But I think the message from the industry in general has been to hold on rate. And we saw the winners coming out of the last crisis, which was financial oriented, 08, 09, where they were able to hold rate and invest in marketing even at a minimal level. Those are the hotels that came out ahead over time as you looked at the overall RevPAR performance 2, 3, 4 years after that last crisis. Next slide, please. So, in April, the U.S. That's a little bit skewed. You can see here in the note that the luxury chain scale here in the U.S. has skewed that. So it's pushed it up significantly. The hotels start to open. Some of the sort of key iconic resorts here in the U.S. on the coast start to open, in particular South Florida and the Keys, Southern California here in the next 30 days, we assume. So it's a little bit misleading, but the good news is, again, that wherever the rate's at, whether you're sub 200 or north of 400, it's relatively stable. We're not seeing massive declines, which is good for the industry as a whole. Next slide. So just to wrap up before we start the panel conversation, we do know, and the data shows that we hear it all the time, but it's confirmed that consumers are spending significantly more time online. They are stuck in the awareness stage of the path to purchase. We're not seeing a lot of buying activity yet. The next 30 days will be crucial in terms of hopefully we start to see that trend go the other way. And we see the bookings go up. So again, it's a content play. You want to be relevant and inspirational. You want to make sure you're using all your channels. We talked specifically about email here, but web, social, and advertising as budgets allow. Even the minimal one, you want to kind of make sure you're in all those places as it can. Personalization, segmentation, and relevance have never been so important. I think Isaac's going to share some things he's been thinking about from a personalization standpoint. really understanding your guests and segmenting is super important as we come back out and you're building your strategies. And again, use those KPIs in our report and anywhere else you're getting data, things you want to measure. Set your benchmarks from 19, understand what your median was, and set your stretch goals. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, probably well into 21, late 21, to get back to whatever our new normal is or was, but really understand the historical data so you can build a strategy against it.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, for that really insightful presentation. We'll now move on to the panel discussion with Carolyn and Michael. So first up, Carolyn, with White Lodging, what impact has COVID had across your hotels, and how are you working through this with your teams?
So if I, kind of isolate the impact that COVID's had from a digital marketing perspective, overseeing the marketing arm of our revenue generation team, there's probably two big points of impact. The first is, we went dark on all paid media and social in mid-March, and we're pretty much consistent in staying dark at this time. I oversee a portfolio of branded hotels, so flagged properties, and so I didn't have to make the painful decision to unplug. The brands did that for me, so they all went dark mid-March. Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and I think that was the right call in terms of what we were seeing at the time with cancellations and net production. So we are still dark for the most part, and going in then further and looking at additional cost savings like many organizations had to do. We looked at mostly, so the second point of impact is the impact on budget. So we had to look at things that we could defer into 2021. We had to look at things that we could potentially use for recovery efforts in the back half of the year, not knowing what those recovery efforts are going to be or should be at this time. But we are looking at an overall 40% reduction in our marketing budgets. So that's pretty significant. And really, I'm trying to, again, preserve something for the back half of the year, and mostly on the primary recovery channels, which I believe are going to be meta search and PPC, of course, very low funnel, very transactional, and social. So we're kind of protecting those dollars and hoping that they'll still be available for us at the back half of the year. So those are the two major points of impact. I think how our team is working through that, if all paid media is dark, we've kind of shifted fundamentally from being paid media strategists to content marketers. Michael talked a lot about the importance of content at this time. So we're not unlike many of you on the call, perhaps. And what's interesting, again, from my perspective, overseeing a branded portfolio, is that when you try and go and update content, you realize how limited opportunity you have as a franchise. And I think it's really interesting in our industry because I don't have the luxury that I could go and just create a landing page on my hotel website or update an important message in pre-arrival guest email. I have to rely on the top-down structure that was designed for a certain purpose from the brands in that manner. But I think it has to get looked at, and things are going to have to kind of shift a little bit. So properties have more custom dynamic fields so that they can update, because everything's going to open up differently by state, across the country, by local jurisdiction, by hotel type. And so it's been interesting to kind of navigate through all those content limitations at this time from my perspective. So we're trying to work through that.
Thanks, Carolyn. And Isaac, what are you seeing in Asia Pacific with minor hotels?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say. I mean, this has been devastating, right? I think it's a huge impact on minor, especially in the Asia region. We actually saw early indicators of it as well, correct? Going into the end of February is a big time of year for us. That's when Chinese New Year starts at the end of January. Coming into January, we had a great sale. We were ahead of last year. And then with Chinese New Year, that's typically when we see a lot of bookings coming through, a lot of people traveling from China down into Thailand. We have so many hotels here. And then all of a sudden we start to see all these cancellations come through, and it just started to grow from there. February and March, I think we all have seen it, and just as the indicators that Michael was showing, that's what we're seeing, right? We're starting to see cancellations really start to uptick, and the bookings start to really drop off. And once we hit that cross point, we're starting to really monitor, what are consumers saying? How are they feeling? Right? How are they reacting to all the content that we were putting out there, whether it was email communications or on social media? And so we quickly realized we had to change our strategy. And it was no longer about just driving bookings and driving revenue. We had to change that because consumers they didn't want to travel anymore. They didn't want to book anymore. They were scared. So how can we give them a level of comfort while they were at home? So we really shifted our strategy to be more aspirational and experiential. We launched a few programs like on Instagram and through social for hashtag Anantara escapism, right? Where we can start to showcase some of the experiences that you could have at our properties, let consumers dream and wish, that want to be in these destinations, but also provide them home wellness tips, right? That's all about the Anantara brand. It's all about wellness and health. So we're giving some home cooking tips, some following the chef. So really trying to see what was going on and make sure we're giving great aspirational content for our consumers. Now, with that being said, we're starting to see things change a little bit. Again, like Michael was showing, we started to see some indicators going up. And in some of the markets, like in China, we're starting to see improvements, right? We're starting to see more bookings and revenue come through. We're also starting to see Vietnam start to open up. So for us, we're really taking a market by market approach and looking at what is the success in each of those markets? Where are we starting to see bookings start to really increase over the number of cancellations? Because now we're seeing cancellations are more or less flat. Where are we seeing that uptick in bookings? And also laying that over with the number of COVID new cases, right? And that's where we're trying to keep an eye on all of those metrics to decide which markets do we start driving more tactical marketing campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Isaac. So it sounds like there's a little bit of positivity there too. Michael, from a global perspective, how would you wrap this up globally? You've just presented to us the impact and what you're seeing from a distribution perspective, I guess. But how are you working with hotel groups across the impact of COVID?
Yeah, I think it's day to day, right? And it feels like I would like to say the worst is behind us. We're seeing a lot of positive trends. We customers, we saw it early with groups like Minor being in Asia and sort of being a leading indicator. Same in EMEA, and then the US to follow. I think we have a long way to go in the US still in terms of what the new normal is going to be, and I think there's a lot opening. Too early to tell what the impact's going to be, if it's going to drive crowds and what the reaction is going to be. And for us and working with our customers and hotels around the globe, the new normal seems to be the new challenge. It's like we all have come to terms with the fact that hotels are closed or are on very skeleton crews, but what's the new normal going to be required? And in terms of how do you deal with large groups? And if you have gaming, how do you open a casino? And how do you entertain? And how you can open your restaurant? I mean, food and beverage has been such a big part of our industry and changed significantly over the last 5 or 6 years, where it's, in a lot of the cases, especially as you move up in 4 and 5 star, food and beverage can account for half of a hotel's revenue. And understanding how to deal with that and address the customer's concerns. So from our perspective, we're looking at all of our software products and trying to understand how we need to change them to address how hotels need to communicate with their guests, whether it's a meeting planner from a proposal that you need to get out, to whether it's an email campaign or it's digital marketing. So there's a lot of little good blips out there. We're hearing them from around the globe. We're cautiously optimistic that we're gonna get out of this sooner than later, but nonetheless, we have a lot of work to do still, and it's been very painful for our industry, not just on the hotelier side, but for vendors as well, trying to adjust and understand. And when you have like Isaac said, we started the year the same way. First 2 months of the year were fantastic, significant growth, and then March 1, it hit us like a train. I mean, just almost immediately we saw it fall off the rails, and so we've had to react accordingly as well. And I think most vendors, regardless whether you do software or room keys or whatever it is, we've all had to make some significant adjustments, and so we'll get there though. We're pretty positive that in short order we'll start seeing some really good things happening.
So, Michael, what initiatives have you put in place to support hoteliers at this time?
Yeah, I mentioned the software. We're working hard from our software perspective, and the digital marketing, the agency side of the business, helping hoteliers scale back and then figure out what the scale up looks like as things happen. That in particular, it's kind of starting from a really hyper local, the local, regional, national, and then international if you have that play. So it's very tiered, and it's interesting when you talk about things like that. The messaging changes significantly. If you're a resort and you have this amazing pool product, historically you'd show your pool full of people. Well, those images don't work anymore, right? You don't want to think about being around 1,000 people in a swimming pool anymore. You want a nice secluded place for your family, so less is more. Same thing with busy restaurants and nightclubs. So it's not just, how am I going to spend my media, but how am I going to position it and how am I going to message it appropriately? And then, working with everyone. It's a struggle, right? If no one's checking into hotels with their closed, there's no income coming in. So we've had to work. You've done a lot of concession planning, working with our customers to help them get through this. And, so that's been a significant effort on our team around the globe. And so, just really for us, it's about letting hoteliers know, and our customers in particular, that we're here for them. And, we're going through it too. And, it's kind of cliche at this point, but we truly believe that we're all in this together, and we all have to make concessions of some shape or form to ensure that we actually all get through it together.
So Isaac, with Minor, how are you working towards reopening in different countries, and what indicators of success would you be looking out for?
Sure. I mean, really, it changes weekly, if not daily, right? There's so much evolving and so much to monitor on what's going on, from government restrictions to how each property is pacing in their own country, right? And what's happening with the virus. So we're really trying to take a market by market approach. We can't do a campaign one size fits all anymore, at least at this point in time, right? We really got to make them dynamic and personalized, as Michael was saying. With a lot of our email communications, we're creating a framework, if you will, but then we have different messaging ready to be deployed depending on the situation in each market, right? And when I'm going to start maybe with what indicators of success we're looking for. And we have some reports that are pretty slick, and it kind of shows us, overlays, what are the virus and where we're seeing new cases or not, and what the level of that is, overlaying with cancellations, overlaying with, new bookings coming in. And we're trying to see, where are we seeing that big uptick? Where does it look like we're seeing key indicators of performance coming back? And those are the markets where we start to, I guess, reshift what we were talking about earlier, right? Just in the previous slide, I was talking about how we're getting really aspirational in our content. And that's been the strategy we really put forward starting in March, talking all about, experiential content, all about home wellness and getting the consumer to dream about wanting to travel again. But now, as we start to see the recovery take suit, we're going market by market, and we're interlaying in those emails, those experiential emails, calls to action for short-term bookings. For instance, I mentioned Vietnam we're starting to see an uptick there. So while they may get the experiential content, they're also going to then have, through the dynamic content, we can target it. So this way, if we see that person, that guest, lives in Vietnam, their email will be slightly different, where they're going to see an offer for a stay in Vietnam. Because we also know, while consumers are wanting to travel, with all of the restrictions, at least country by country in Asia, you can't go far. So it's all domestic travel. So we're really trying to make sure that we're targeting the emails and all of our campaigns, whether it's social or display, with campaigns that are good in market for market. We're looking at getting ready a lot of rediscovery type of promotions that are going to get consumers, once we can open up in the different markets, excited to want to travel and to explore and want to be there. But I think the other key piece is, it's one thing to go out there to market all these campaigns and try to drive the consumers to our websites to make bookings, but we also got to think about what they're looking for. And that's been top of mind as well, right? Flexibility is a big initiative that we put into place. And while we have a campaign out there, we had a campaign out there that was all about just bookings. Now we changed it up a little bit, so it's about flexibility of booking, right? And making sure that the guests can cancel if they want to. So giving them those options, right? We know going into this, a lot of consumers got very frustrated because they couldn't travel anymore and they wanted to just cancel. They lost that confidence in whether they can cancel their room nights. And as far as, we don't want them to cancel, we'd rather them not, but they wanted to. So now they want that peace of mind, right? So we're looking at giving them options. So when they land on the landing pages, they can book a rate that they can cancel, or maybe they can spend a little bit more money and they're going to get a rate that they can't cancel, but there's flexibility in it that they can change the date. So just trying to serve up content and offers and campaigns that the customers, keeping their thoughts top of mind to help build that confidence. It's
Great.
just a few of
Thank
the
you,
initiatives.
Isaac. So, Carolyn. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Carolyn, with White Lodging, what are some of the strategies you're looking at to support reopening? And at this point, can you formulate long-term strategies?
I'll answer the second one first, because that's quick. No. I mean, I say that a little bit off the cuff, but I kind of look at it right now, how are we supporting not necessarily reopening strategies, but reoperating strategies? I mean, I think it's really interesting that, as a franchisee, I just want to go to the brands and say, give me a playbook that says, how do you start from scratch? You should have something that I can download. And, I can't go to an agency or a vendor. This has never happened in this degree in our industry. And so, some of the things that we're doing to support an initial main strategy is just very tactical, and it's very, creating checklists. So we have to create from scratch how someone goes and updates something. And that seems so trivial and that seems so basic, but so much is focused now on critical content. As lusting after Isaac saying that he wanted to, he's writing aspirational campaigns and trying different call to actions. I mean, at this point for franchise properties, I can't go and upload a new offer to a branded hotel website. That option is frozen. They've yet to provide new commercial guidelines for promos, and that's coming, right? That's part of the recovery efforts, but I can't be as nimble as perhaps Isaac is being. And so right now for us, it's all about, our strategies are focused around critical content. And let's be honest, I mean, if a hotel comes to me and says, we want to open up a restaurant, and how do we communicate that? Right now, we're at a checklist of about 30 different items that hotel would have to go, whether it's this login, this extranet, this dashboard, this social bio. I mean, there's literally 30 places that a GM would have to go and update that. And that's just for restaurant reopening, let's say. And having to write those things in a do-it-yourself model. We're spending a lot of time being strategic in that manner. Whereas an above property support might have done that, or a brand team might have done that with limited resources at either of those levels at this point. Everything has to be executed at the hotel level, and writing how-tos becomes quite a laborious activity at that level, providing the 30 different checkpoints and then how to log in and then where to go. So one of our main strategies, again, is creating really very tactical checklists that can be executed at the property level for basic content. One of our other strategies too is maintain ADRs. We talked a lot about that on the previous slides, but that's something that's true to our heart as well. I mean, we're in a health crisis. We're not, if we lower rates and drop our rates, I mean, it doesn't matter how low that is or what a great deal that might be. People just aren't traveling. We are seeing some encouraging trends as of late. So I think we're in our, close to our 10th day of consecutive bookings. Those are outpacing our cancellations with our specific portfolio in North America. We're seeing an incredible amount of in the month for the month. So that still is telling us that that's a lot of just essential traveler that's needing to book. And then our second largest booking windows are coming into late August, fall. So that kind of then goes into our third kind of strategy right now, which is kind of understanding and trying to dig deeper into the booking window. I think that's changed significantly for us as marketers, whereas a lot of our leisure, a lot of our transient promotions were focused around, a tighter, especially online, a 30 to 45, day booking window for leisure. We're looking at seeing that 60, 90 day. So it's part of our third strategy as well.
Okay, thank you, Carol. So Michael, what can the hotels be doing right now from a technology standpoint to ensure they come out of this strong?
I think it's a good opportunity to reassess. We hear a lot of customers, there's kind of two approaches, right? Either you're looking at something that maybe you wanted, and if you have the cash and the flexibility to do it, it's a good opportunity given the hotels are either closed or low occupancy. So if you have the human capital, the resources to actually take on new projects, it's a good time to assess and relook at what you had and what you might need. We also see we have quite a few clients around the globe that have used the opportunity to kind of put their foot on the gas, accelerate getting things done so that they can prepare themselves to come out of this. And that's not just big groups of hotels. We see a significant push from independents, in particular in the EMEA market, to get their hands around CRM and their customer data, so they understand their guests and their best guest profiles coming out of it, so they can go find more that look like that, knowing that they're going to have to probably be much more local than they were originally. And if you're a hotel in Switzerland and the UK has been a big feeder market for you, chances of that coming back right away is not great, right? So how do you identify what that best guest looked like from the UK and then go find them locally? So again, I think it's a good opportunity to reassess, and if you have the resources to kind of push through it and be ready to come out of it.
Michael, I had a question for you on the technology front. So do you think this is the renaissance of the QR code?
I'll steal your line. Short answer, no.
I feel like that's something that's come up quite a bit as a kind of how you digitize a lot of the previous physical, components. I'm like, are we really again talking about QR codes in our industry? So I didn't know your standpoint or on that.
Yeah, we hear it. We definitely get the question, because touchless, right? Super important coming out of this from.
Right.
We're getting a lot of inquiries at a vendor level from people that deal in technology, like that can deliver a mobile room key. So they want integration from their technology to the CRM platform, so it's seamless for the customer, right? There's not all these multiple touch points. They don't have to download an app. They can deliver the encrypted key directly to their phone. There's all sorts of efforts that are going on around that.
Right.
And companies like an Oki, for example, that you upsell are looking at things like that as well. How do you increase across the portfolio, in-room people, the Run Triz of the world and groups like that, their ability to take the touch out of everything. There's a ton of conversation around that. I'm just hoping that it doesn't revolve around QR codes.
All jokes aside, it's kind of funny though too, right? Because when I was in the States, I would never use a QR code, but now being in Thailand, in Asia, I mean, we use QR codes quite a bit, right? I left my wallet at home once, went to the gas station, and I was able to pay with gas with my QR code through my phone, right? So I think it's also market by market basis, and the mobile technology is, I think, so much more well adapted in this part of the world that we are using QR codes actually quite a bit.
Interesting.
It's interesting to see how it kind of evolved.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just, traveling overseas, obviously spent time in your neck of the woods this past year, and it's the touchless payments, even just at a basic credit card level, is significantly farther ahead everywhere else in the world outside of the North America, in particular the U.S. I assume that this event is going to change that significantly and pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Michael, what needs to change in our industry? I guess we just touched on QR codes and touchless, but what other changes do you see as we head into recovery?
Honestly, I hope, I know Carolyn and I have heard me say this before. I feel like from a digital standpoint, digital not just from a marketing technology standpoint, just digital adoption. We're typically slow to adopt. We're far behind retail, entertainment, industries like that are very quick to change and adopt. I hope that we become more nimble and we're quicker to adopt from a digital standpoint. And I think, the topic we just talked about, I think our hand's going to be forced there in a certain respect in terms of touchless things, whether that's ordering, transaction, whatever it might be. But for me, that's the big thing. I'm just looking for hospitality, hoteliers in particular, and vendors alike to become more nimble and speed to market from a digital, both providing the services and an adoption standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in as well. I mean,
Isaac and sorry, Carolyn.
Sorry, no, it's okay. I mentioned this before, but in all seriousness, I do think that we've learned through this that consumers are, using different channels or using channels differently, right? And they're using different technology, and they're actually the information they want is different than before. And so I think then looking at hospitality industry has many different systems that are antiquated, they're layered, they're clunky, and I think that this is going to force our industry to perhaps kind of, if we have to zero base, what systems can we plug in with integration, and have more fluidity with data, have more fluidity with syndication and publishing of information. I think that's going to show us how important that is. We're going to need to do that, and I think it might be a silver lining in terms of within our industry of what this might call out.
Yeah, sure. So that concludes the questions to the panel, but we're opening up to the audience now, to attendees. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. We've got a question has already come in about marketing budgets have been reduced to zero this year. Question to all of you, maybe starting with Carolyn, what are your suggestions on reaching the customer with virtually no budget? How do you go about it?
I would really leverage just finding out what shelf you need to be on. So there's lots of, local listings, whether that's a Google My Business or a TripAdvisor or, just different, there's shelves that you can be on at low cost or no cost that are still really well visited, trusted. So I would get your kind of digital storefront in order. And then when it's time, I think you need to prime your leisure kind of engine and make sure that you have at least the right kind of promotions with the right messaging, with the right booking windows on your website. So baseline, just make sure you have something. So as people start to, dream and travel, that they're seeing some options where there's no paid media behind it. There's no paid media, but at least you are, enriching your book direct channel in that way.
Isaac, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is if you have no budget, you really have to dive into your database and the data that you do have, and really looking at your email communication tools to figure out the messaging that you should be sending, and then emailing, right? Sending those communications out there. Very targeted approach. Look at the data, look at the regions, and try to be very tactical in what you're sending out. But then also looking at full-on campaigns as well. You got to start small, right? And even though you might not have a budget, that's not really the way to go into this thinking that, oh my gosh, I can't do any marketing. You should be tying in the email campaigns with social media, maybe from an organic perspective, change some of the content, but then try to get a really small budget, right? Maybe you could get a small budget for social and start to see some indicators and show some successes, so then you can sell it to the powers that be and get additional budget, right? Because ultimately we're gonna need that budget, but it's about getting something to work first so we can show that we're going in the right path with our marketing message, and then being able to say, okay, now I do need more budget because I can show you that ROI based off of this new strategy and approach. I think it's gonna be very hard to drive too much revenue if we can't go outside of your own database, right? And it's gonna be a very competitive landscape. So use your CRM and then evolve it from there.
And Michael, any other thoughts?
No, I think it's really well said. And I think Carolyn hit two things on the head earlier, and it ties into what Isaac just said in terms of starting small. Start with paid search and meta. Those are two channels that typically perform well, as long as you understand your targets and your fencing around what you're trying to accomplish. So I think, start there. And then we're seeing a lot of hoteliers around the globe really take a hard look at their website. And Carolyn said digital storefront, but your website, whether that's within a brand.com scenario or your own hotel website, really take the opportunity to look hard at your SEO, your schema, your content, and how have you ranked organically? Have you been growing? Where did it work? Is it by a certain region? Is there a multilingual opportunity in terms of content? So I think what they said and those few other things be a great approach.
Okay, thank you all. We've got another question here. What's your take on hotel bonds? Essentially, you're giving the hotel a short-term loan, and in return, you're getting added value on your future booking as interest of sorts. I guess anyone want to tackle that one?
I guess sorry, one more time? For the short-term bump?
It's take on hotel bonds. Basically, I think the question is, you're giving the hotel a short-term loan, and in return, you're getting added value on your future booking as interest. I guess, in terms of booking trends, we're seeing a lot of hotels now offering, or a lot of businesses offering gift certificates of sorts in terms of booking. So you're prepaying a booking, which you can then cash in when you make the reservation in the future.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, good
absolutely.
idea.
That's absolutely. We've been seeing quite a bit of that, at least in Asia, and some of the brands out here. And I know we're putting some together as well, but a lot of added value gift certificate programs, right? Or to really to your point, so we could start selling those gift cards and start generating revenue now, but also letting consumers know. It goes back to that flexibility. Book the package now at this great rate, through a gift card. Get the booking now. We're going to give you that added value, and now you have the flexibility to book it when you're ready and when you're confident. So absolutely believe in that strategy, and we're starting to see a lot of that right now.
We do not, and I think a lot of it's just because it's hard for a branded or flagged property to do that. But I will say that some counterparts with independent properties have seen some luck in that. And I think the ones that are doing better are the ones that are fencing it. So lock in this rate on these room types, let's say, or for weekends only, or up until. So I think they fence it a little bit in that manner. And I think that those are the ones that are having a little bit more initial success to protect themselves, as well as inspire travel and get some of those initial bookings.
Okay, another one for you, Carolyn, at White Lodging. How do you think COVID will affect hotel management companies in the future?
It's a complex landscape, right? I mean, there's typically, I'll speak for my team. So we are designed to kind of further complement and enhance and outperform what the brands can do. We already pay marketing franchise fees. So, my additional team is an enhanced service that has, for our portfolio, outperformed brand averages. So I think that it's more complex in our kind of environment because of all the layered additional costs between franchise, third-party vendors, partners, and then as well as the above property allocations. But I think all of this is going to snap back. I think, when it comes back, it's going to go rather quickly, and you need to have all those different, all those layers of support and service to continue to build and bring us back. So I think, like anything, the management companies have an impact. And I do think, like everything else, it's going to come back, and it's going to be a needed resource, as it always has been.
And Michael, final question before we wrap up. We've got a lot of idle team time at the moment. How is your team maximizing that time right now?
Yeah, for us, we're taking advantage of kind of hitting the reset on all of our internal processes, customer service, help desk, all of our product lines. We've had some products that have been probably needed either attention or to move on, for lack of a better phrase. And so we're taking the opportunity to sort of clean house and reset and be prepared to come out of this stronger than we were. And at the same time, we still have a lot of clients that have a lot of open hotels around the globe that need support from our teams wherever they might be, whether it's in the Americas, EMEA, or APAC. And so we're trying to be available and be flexible.
You know, and I think what Michael had mentioned earlier as well, and just using this time to look at all of your materials on property or online, your website, you know, can you update the content? Can you be making some of those enhancements? And you know, that's some of the things that we're asking our properties to do as well. Look at all your collaterals, whether online or offline.
Sure. Did you have any last comments? All good? Okay. So I think that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you very much for attending, and particularly thank you to our three amazing presenters, Carolyn, Isaac, and Michael. We hope you've enjoyed and learned a lot from today's webinar, particularly on the perspective of the current state of the industry, some insights into how to navigate the current impacts, and maybe got some focus to assist in maximising opportunities for recovery. Today's webinar has been recorded, and after the webinar, in the next 24 hours, we'll be sending a link to everyone who registered for your future reference. So finally, thank you again for joining. We wish you all the very best in confronting, navigating, and maximising the opportunities in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.